My name is Margaret. I'm 58 years old, recently retired after 30 years as a nurse, and I live alone in a quiet corner of Austin. Most days are filled with small routines, feeding the cat that isn't mine, watering the porch fern, rereading old books I've forgotten the endings to. But today was supposed to be different. Today was my son's wedding, Ethan, my only child. The boy I raised through double shifts and missed holidays and years of ramen dinners. I woke up at 5 that morning without needing the alarm. The house was still dark, and for a while I just sat in bed listening to the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the birds starting their songs outside the window. I had laid everything out the night before, not because I'm forgetful, but because I wanted to savor it. The dress was hanging from the closet door, a soft lavender chiffon hand-stitched at the waist. Not flashy, not loud, just elegant enough to make me feel like I mattered in the photos. The shoes were ivory pumps I had eyed online for 3 years. I never bought them until now. They felt like a little indulgence, like proof that I still had places worth showing up to. I spent the morning at a small salon a few blocks away. Marisol, the stylist, curled my hair with such care you'd think I was the bride. She asked if I was nervous, and I smiled and said no. But the truth was I was. I was nervous that I'd feel invisible again. Like I do in grocery lines, at church potlucks, and group texts I'm always the last to reply to. I kept telling myself that this day would be different, that today someone would look at me and say, "I see you." Not because I paid for the catering or the band or the dress Emily would walk down the aisle in, but because I was the mother of the groom. At home, I slipped into my dress, slowly smoothing it over my hips like a ritual. I put on the pearl earrings I bought myself the year Ethan got into college. Back then, I promised I'd wear them on his wedding day. I stood in front of the mirror for a long time, not because I didn't like what I saw, but because I did, and I wasn't used to that. There was something tender about that moment, about the way I caught my own eyes in the mirror and whispered, "You made it." Not to any milestone, but to this strange middle ground, where the past no longer holds you down, and the future is still generous enough to surprise you. I took one last look at the house before locking up. The fridge still had his favorite juice. The magnet he made in 3rd grade still held up a faded electric bill. There were memories etched into every corner. It felt like walking out of a scrapbook. As I drove to the venue, I felt a lightness I hadn't known in years. I imagined Ethan's face when he saw me. I imagined a slow dance, maybe a toast where he'd call me the strongest woman he knew. I didn't expect a parade, just a seat, a place, a moment. That was all I wanted. By the time I pulled into the lot, the sky had cleared. The sun cast long shadows across the pavement, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I might belong somewhere again. I straightened my dress in the mirror, pressed a hand over my heart to steady it. Then I opened the door, stepped out, and walked toward what I thought would be one of the proudest days of my life. The venue was beautiful. White chairs lined the aisle like soldiers' petals scattered neatly down the path, and fairy lights wrapped around old oak beams that looked like something out of a magazine spread. For a second, just a second, I thought maybe I had been wrong to worry. Maybe it would be fine. I stepped inside and looked around for a name card. There were elegant place settings on every table, crisp linen napkins, folded into fans' wine glasses catching the light. I scanned the names again. Then again, mine wasn't there. Before I could ask anyone, a young man in a catering uniform approached. His voice was soft, rehearsed. He said something about the bride requesting that certain guests wait in the back for now. Certain guests. Me. I blinked, not quite understanding. He led me through a side door and into the kitchen. A folding chair sat near the staff cart, the wheel squeaking every time someone pushed it. There was a tray of shrimp cocktail next to it. I had paid for that. Every detail, every upgrade. My chair, it seemed, was beside a tub of ranch dip. I stood there for a while, dress catching the edge of a metal counter, the smell of garlic and dish soap clinging to the air. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to make a scene. I told myself maybe this was temporary. Maybe someone would come find me. No one did. I sat down. The floor was sticky beneath my shoes. I held my purse in my lap like a shield, fingers clenched around the strap. I could hear laughter through the swinging door, clinking glasses, a voice on a microphone. It wasn't mine. I remembered the phone calls. Emily asking for little upgrades using that word she loved. Elevated. Could we elevate the centerpiece budget? Could we elevate the bar menu? I said yes every time. Because I wanted Ethan's day to be perfect. Because I thought that would mean I mattered. I worked nights back when Ethan was little. I'd come home and nap on the couch while he ate cereal and watched cartoons. I missed school plays. I missed sleep. I didn't miss a single bill. When he needed braces, I picked up 2 extra weekend shifts and dropped my dental plan to cover his. When he wanted to go to prom, I sold my old engagement ring to buy his tux and help with tickets. When Emily said yes, I said yes too. Yes to the venue. Yes to the flowers. Yes to the photographer she swore would capture the day just right. No one offered to split the costs. Not her parents, not Ethan. And I didn't ask. Because I believed that being the person who built the foundation meant I'd get to sit at the table, just once. A waiter brushed past me with a tray of champagne. He didn't look at me. I caught a glimpse through the kitchen door. Ethan, smiling, adjusting his cufflinks, standing next to Emily's mother like she had raised him. She wore deep blue. I remembered because I paid for her dress too. I had offered it as a gesture, a way to make everyone feel included. But as I sat there, napkin in my lap, a small tear near the hem of my dress, catching the edge of a rolling cart, I realized something. No one had looked for me. Not Ethan, not Emily, not even someone from the bridal party. My name wasn't on the program, not in the family section, not in the thank yous, not anywhere. I reached into my purse and pulled out the little card Ethan made me for Mother's Day 10 years ago. It had a drawing of a house and the words, "Best Mom," written in crayon. I kept it with me, always. That woman, that mom, she raised him. She was me. And yet here I was, hidden behind a door, kept out of sight so I wouldn't clash with the theme. I didn't even know what that meant. What part of me clashed with a wedding about love? The bride's toast echoed through the walls. Her mother beamed beside her. The first dance started. I didn't see it. I just felt it. Through the vibrations in the wall, through the clatter of silverware behind me, through the ache in my chest that no one else could feel. I thought about leaving, just walking out the back door, getting in my car and driving away. But I stayed. Not because I was welcome, but because I still believed that if I waited long enough, someone would remember. They didn't. That night after the music faded, I waited until the last server left. My shoes were scuffed. My hair smelled like kitchen grease. My dress had marinara on the hem. No one ever came to find me. No one asked where I was. And when I stepped outside into the night, I realized something colder than the breeze that hit my bare arms. I hadn't just been overlooked. I had been placed. Deliberately, quietly, as if I were just another part of the service team. Not the woman who gave up everything to build the life they were now celebrating. That truth hit harder than any slap could. I didn't cry, not yet. I was still holding the purse Ethan gave me years ago, the one thing I brought that had real meaning. And in that moment, I clutched it like a lifeline as the light inside me dimmed. Back at the hotel, the hallway smelled like carpet cleaner and someone else's perfume. I didn't turn on the light when I walked into the room. I just sat on the edge of the bed, still in my dress, staring at the untouched welcome basket the front desk had left for wedding guests. My feet were swollen red where the shoes had pinched. I kicked them off and let them fall sideways, one landing on its side, like it had given up too. My fingers ached as I pulled the tablet out of my purse hands, stiff and sore from holding on to dignity all day. The budget file was still open. I had updated it religiously for over a year. Color-coded tabs neatly labeled categories, notes in the margins about deposits and tips. It was the one thing I could control. My version of love looked like organization. I scrolled through the list again. The final florist invoice had come through. I'd paid it without a second thought. Then I noticed something odd. 2 new charges from the past 3 days, both to the same high-end restaurant on South Lamar. One was for a tasting menu with a wine pairing, the other a private dinner upgrade. I hadn't approved either. They weren't in the spreadsheet. I stared at the amounts, high enough to sting, familiar enough to scare me. My card had been used, the same one I kept locked in a drawer for emergencies, the same one I had given Ethan access to last spring when deposits were due, and they didn't have enough saved. I never took it back. I told myself it was for ease, for flexibility. For them. I opened my banking app. It confirmed what I already knew. The charges were real. My balance had dropped below what I was comfortable with. Not dangerous, but enough to make my stomach twist. I sat back and let the tablet rest against my thighs. The air conditioning clicked on cold against the sweat drying at my neckline. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for my legs to stiffen. Long enough for the ache to move from my body to somewhere deeper. I told myself not to go looking for more, but I did. I opened Venmo half out of habit. It had been how we split things early on, Emily reimbursing me for cake samples, little things like that. I don't know what I was hoping for. Maybe a thank you, maybe nothing. Instead, I saw a transaction from Emily to one of her bridesmaids. $50. The caption read, "His mom is covering everything. Might as well go big. Wedding vibes." That's all it said. I didn't blink, I didn't breathe. It didn't feel like reading a betrayal. It felt like reading a joke, where you were the punchline and the room had already moved on. The heat left my hands first, then my chest. I wasn't angry, not yet. It was something worse. I felt used. Not overlooked, not forgotten. Used. Like a line of credit they knew wouldn't push back. I looked around the hotel room, beige walls, a single framed photo of a flower I couldn't name. I tried to remember the last time Ethan had thanked me for anything. A real thank you, not the automatic kind. The kind where someone looks you in the eye. My reflection in the dark window stared back. Hair limp from the kitchen air lipstick, faded eyes tired. I looked like a woman who had tried too hard for too long. I put the tablet down gently, like it might break if I moved too fast. My hands trembled, not from age, not from exhaustion, but from something unraveling inside me that had held on too long. I had built this day, brick by brick, line by line. I gave them a wedding I never had, a day I thought would be ours, and instead I had been reduced to a footnote on a receipt, a joke between friends, a wallet with a smile. I didn't cry. There weren't tears left, just silence. A quiet so heavy it made the hotel walls press in. The kind of silence you only feel when the illusion has shattered and you're the only one still standing in the wreckage. I curled up on the bed without taking off my dress. The zipper dug into my back, but I didn't move. I just laid there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan, watching it spin like it might spin fast enough to erase what I'd seen. It didn't. The sky was still dark when I opened my eyes. I hadn't really slept, just drifted in and out of a dull, aching quiet. The sheets were wrinkled from hours of lying still, my body too tired to rest, my mind too loud to sleep. I sat up and turned on the desk lamp. Its soft light cast a warm circle on the wood, the only safe place in the room. I slid my tablet across the desk and opened my email. There was no ceremony to it. No playlist, no coffee, no dramatic music swelling in the background. Just me. Barefaced hair pinned back still in yesterday's dress. My fingers hovered over the keys for a moment before I started typing. The first message was to the florist. Please cancel Sunday's delivery. Per our contract, the remaining balance will not be issued. Thank you. I read it twice before pressing send. The second was to the band scheduled for the post-wedding brunch. We will no longer need your services. This matter is considered closed. Thank you for your time. The third was to the beverage vendor. I requested they cancel the additional shift, the one Emily insisted on, for a full mimosa bar and signature cocktails named after their dog. I told them not to process the final payment. Each message was short, direct, and final. I didn't offer reasons. I didn't leave the door open. I wasn't looking for a fight. I just wanted the bleeding to stop. For the first time in years, I didn't try to explain myself. I didn't soften my voice or wrap my decision in a blanket of apologies. I had spent too long making sure everyone else was comfortable while I sat on folding chairs near kitchen carts. There was no anger in me, just space, a quiet hum that filled the room as the emails sent one by one. My hands didn't shake anymore, my chest didn't burn. I looked around the hotel room, the mess of wedding makeup, the garment bag slumped in the corner, the pair of heels I never got to show off. I used to think these things mattered. I used to believe that giving meant belonging. But I saw now what I hadn't let myself see before. I had poured myself into other people's milestones. Birthdays, graduations, every single celebration that wasn't mine. And I was tired. I powered down the tablet and sat still for a long time. The kind of still where nothing is aching to move. It felt strange at first, then it felt like relief. Outside the sun was just beginning to rise, a soft gold pressed against the edges of the blinds. I walked to the window and pulled them open. The city was waking up slowly, traffic lights blinking, delivery trucks rumbling past. Somewhere across town, Ethan and Emily were probably still asleep, still wrapped in the joy they thought they built on their own. They didn't know yet. They didn't know the brunch they planned would be quiet, that the flowers wouldn't arrive, that the music had been silenced. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel cruel. I just felt done. I had made no scene. I hadn't screamed or cried or ruined anything. I simply stepped back, like the tide pulling away from a shore that had taken too much for too long. Let them wonder why. Let them trace it back to a missed seat or a misunderstood theme. Let them write their own stories. I was done writing myself out of mine. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. And it was mine. The house was silent when I came back. Not the kind of silence that invites rest, but the kind that follows something breaking. I dropped my keys on the counter and stood for a long time in the doorway, unsure whether I felt more empty or relieved. My dress was wrinkled, still carrying the scent of kitchen grease and old perfume. I peeled it off carefully, like shedding the last layer of pretending. The quiet wrapped around me like a blanket too heavy to move beneath. I didn't unpack. I didn't turn on the lights. I walked through the rooms like I was visiting a place I used to live. Everything felt familiar but distant, a version of my life I had once believed in. The photos on the wall looked different now. Ethan smiling with cake on his cheeks. Ethan in his cap and gown, Ethan holding up a trophy at age 12. Each one felt heavier than before. I couldn't look too long. In the bedroom, I opened the drawer I hadn't touched in years. I don't know why. Maybe I was searching for something to hold on to, or maybe I just needed to fill the stillness. The papers inside were unremarkable. Insurance forms, expired coupons, a birthday card from a coworker whose name I'd forgotten. Then I saw it. A red folder, thin and bent at the edges. Inside was a sealed envelope. The handwriting was unmistakable. Michael's. My ex-husband, gone nearly 10 years now. The postmark was dated 3 days before he died. My hands hesitated. Then they didn't. The paper crackled as I opened it. The first line was plain. Helen, I know you never wanted to hear from me again, but there's something I need you to know. My breath caught somewhere between a gasp and a sigh. I kept reading. I've been carrying a secret, and I can't take it with me. You deserve the truth. Ethan isn't your biological son. My hands froze. The air in the room disappeared. The letter felt like it had weight, like it might pull me through the floor. He wrote that Emily had been pregnant when they got back together, that he thought he could raise the child as his own, that when he left behind a lie too heavy to carry. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the walls, like they might shift and make space for this new truth. Every scraped knee, every science project, every night I sat in a waiting room praying over an inhaler or a fever. I had been there, I had done it all, and somehow I had done it blind. I read the rest of the letter. Apologies, regrets, words from a man who never faced the consequences of his choices, words I had no use for anymore. I thought about all the moments I had whispered to myself, you were chosen, even when Ethan pulled away, even when Emily ignored my texts. I told myself I mattered, because I had to. Now I knew I wasn't chosen. I was convenient. But that didn't change the truth I had lived. I was there, for every late-night phone call, every peanut-free bake sale, every nightmare that needed soothing. I had passed a test I didn't know I was taking, and I had passed it alone. I folded the letter and slid it back into the envelope. I placed it gently on the nightstand, not out of care for him, but because I needed one more minute of quiet before everything else caught up. There was no anger in me, just a deep, aching clarity. I had been erased not because of blood, but because it was easier for them that way. Ethan hadn't kept me out because I wasn't his mother. He kept me out because pretending I was didn't fit the picture they wanted. And that was the real betrayal. But there was also something else, a strange lightness under the weight. I had done all of it, every sacrifice, not for recognition, but because I loved him. and that made it real. Even if he didn't know it, even if he never would. I looked around the room again. It wasn't grief I felt. It was release. The kind that comes when you realize you can finally stop holding your breath. I turned off the light, slid beneath the covers, and for the first time in days, I slept. Not deeply, not long, but enough to remember who I was before all of this. And in the morning, I made coffee and sat at the table alone. Not lonely, just alone. And it was enough. The next evening, I stood in my kitchen with the windows open. The air was warm, laced with the smell of lavender from the garden, and something new stirring inside me. I didn't reach for leftovers or take-out menus. I reached for olive oil, fresh garlic, and a bag of cherry tomatoes I'd picked up that morning without thinking. Ethan never liked tomatoes. I used to avoid them for his sake. But that night I roasted them until their skins burst, and their sweetness filled the house like a quiet promise that things could change. I boiled pasta, grated real Parmesan, and added lemon zest, just because I felt like it. I set the table for one. Cloth napkin, a real plate, and a candle that smelled like sea salt and cedar. I poured myself a glass of wine and didn't rush. I didn't scroll through my phone or check the time. I sat, I chewed, I tasted. It was the first time in years I made something only for me. The silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like peace. After dinner, I cleared the table, wiped the counter, and walked to my desk. I pulled out a stack of lined yellow stationery and a pen I liked for how smoothly it moved. I wrote 6 invitations, no gold foil, no cursive script, just my handwriting steady and certain. One went to Claire, the ER nurse, who used to slip chocolate into my locker when I worked doubles. One went to Mr. Henderson, my neighbor, who always shoveled my driveway before I even had a chance. I invited Dina from the bookstore, who never forgot to ask how I was doing and actually waited for the answer. I wrote to Nurse Janet, who stayed late once on her birthday to cover my shift without asking why. I added Olivia, who once held my hand through a rough procedure when no one else was there, and Marla, the woman at the post office who knew my name and asked about my garden even when I didn't feel like talking. No one on that list shared my blood, but every one of them had seen me. The next Sunday they came, not all at once, but enough to fill the table I used to fold laundry on and help Ethan with math homework. Now it held wine glasses, mismatched dishes, bowls of salad, and the warmth of people who showed up because they wanted to. There was no reason for the dinner, no celebration, no milestone. Just people gathered around good food, passing things left and right, telling stories that didn't need explanations. I sat at the head of the table. Claire raised her glass near the end of the meal. To Margaret, she said, for reminding us that it's never too late to take your rightful seat. Everyone clinked glasses. I smiled so wide my cheeks ached. And then I laughed. Not the polite kind, not the careful keep-it-together kind. A laugh from deep in my chest. The kind that tasted like something blooming again. That night, after the dishes were rinsed and the chairs pushed back in, I stood in the middle of the kitchen and let the joy hang in the air a little longer. It smelled like garlic and something healing. I didn't need a wedding. I didn't need a toast from a stranger in a ballroom. I just needed this. A table that was mine, filled with people who saw me not as a wallet or a background figure, but as someone worth sitting beside. For the first time in a long while, I felt full. Not with food, with belonging. And I knew I had chosen right. The knock came just after noon. Not loud, not frantic. Just steady. Like he knew I was home, like he wasn't leaving until I answered. I stood in the hallway barefoot, my hands still damp from rinsing lunch dishes. Through the frosted glass, I saw his outline. He looked smaller somehow, shoulders hunched, a wrinkled t-shirt instead of the tailored suit from last week. No smile, no glow, just Ethan, my son, or the boy I once called that. I opened the door slowly. He didn't speak right away. Neither did I. I stepped aside. He walked in without asking like he always used to. But everything about him felt uncertain. The living room was clean, no photos on the walls, no trace of him anywhere. He noticed. His eyes moved to the mantel, then to the empty end table where a picture of him in kindergarten used to sit. "Where are the pictures?" he asked. I didn't answer. I pointed to the couch. "Sit." He obeyed, like a child again. I stayed standing. I didn't want to sit across from him. Not yet. Not until the air stopped buzzing with everything unsaid. He cleared his throat. I didn't come here to fight. Good, I said. He ran a hand through his hair. I just don't understand what happened. 1 minute, everything was fine. The next, you're canceling everything. Emily's mom is furious. Guess we're confused. I let him talk until the words ran out. Then I walked to the hallway closet, pulled out the box I had prepared. I set it down on the coffee table between us. He looked at it but didn't touch it. What's this? Receipts, I said. Every payment, every vendor, every favor, all of it. His jaw tightened. Then I handed him the envelope, the letter from Michael. He hesitated before taking it. His fingers trembled as he unfolded the paper. I didn't speak while he read. His face moved through confusion, discomfort, and finally something that looked like recognition. You knew, he asked. I do now. So you're angry because I'm not your biological son? No, I said quietly. I'm angry because I raised you. I gave you everything I had. And when the moment came to honor that to see me, you let them shove me in the kitchen. And you said nothing. He dropped his gaze. Emily thought it would be better for the pictures. I didn't think you'd be hurt. I laughed. Cold, brief, no Ethan. You didn't think. I picked up an empty frame from the mantel. This used to hold your graduation photo. You had a crooked tie, and I had tears in my eyes. You ran straight into my arms. I placed the frame face down on the coffee table. I'm done holding on to versions of you that no longer exist. His eyes watered. I'm sorry. It's too late, I said. I handed him the box. These are yours now. He sat frozen, like maybe he expected something else. A hug, a tearful ending. But I didn't owe him that anymore. He stood. You used to say I was your whole world. I met his eyes. You were, and now I'm finally mine. I walked him to the door. He turned once like he might say something else, but he didn't. I closed the door behind him with a soft click. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel empty. It felt settled. There was garlic in the air from the pasta I'd made earlier. A wine glass still sparkled in the sink. I looked around and saw not what was missing, but what I had chosen to keep. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I'd lost a son. I felt like I had finally reclaimed myself. The afternoon light slanted across the floor as I moved through the house. The door had barely closed behind Ethan when I reached for a step stool and began taking down the photos. One by one, I slipped them from their frames. There was no anger in it, just something quiet and necessary. My hands worked slowly, almost tenderly, like I was closing a chapter with care. The baby picture with the frosting-smeared cheeks. The graduation shot with his lopsided cap. The photo from his first car ride, both of us squinting into the sun. I wrapped each in old towels and dishcloths, placed them gently into a cardboard box. I took a marker from the drawer and wrote in plain letters across the top, "Memories, not obligations." Then I pushed the box into the back of the closet behind the winter coats I rarely wore. The living room looked bare without the frames, but not empty, just open. I dusted the shelves, wiped the table, swept the floor, as if clearing space made it easier to breathe. The house was quiet, but it didn't echo anymore. I went into the kitchen and put water on to boil. This time I made the pasta again. Lemon butter with roasted cherry tomatoes and cracked black pepper. I added fresh basil and sea salt without thinking twice. Music played low from a speaker on the counter. Nina Simone, something slow and knowing. I lit a candle not for atmosphere, but because I liked the flicker. I set the table with the good dishes, a cloth napkin, the wine glass from the cabinet I used to save for company. Tonight I was the company. I sat down and twirled the pasta slowly onto my fork. The tomatoes burst with sweetness. The butter clung to the noodles just right. I chewed slowly, not because I was sad, but because it tasted like freedom. The air smelled like garlic and rosemary. My shoulders didn't feel tight. My chest didn't ache. I finished every bite. After dinner, I rinsed the plate and left it to dry. I stood by the window and looked out at the garden wild with roses I hadn't trimmed in months. They bloomed big and unruly, like they didn't care who approved of their shape. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt honest. The kind of space that held only what was real. I curled into the couch with a blanket that smelled like lavender detergent. Outside, the sky turned soft and purple. Inside, I exhaled. Not because I was holding anything in, but because I finally didn't have to. And that was enough. To the women still sitting in kitchens with paper napkins and no place cards. To the ones who paid the bill, baked the cake, folded the chairs, and were thanked with silence. I see you. You weren't forgotten by accident. You were written out because your presence made others uncomfortable with their own convenience. But that doesn't make you invisible. It makes you vital. You don't need to shout. You don't need to throw anything or demand your name be added to a program. All you need is to take back the seat you gave away too many times. And if the table doesn't welcome you, set your own. You are not bitter. You are not broken. You are awake. And when a woman finally sees the difference between being used and being loved, something strong begins to grow in her. So light the candle, make the dinner, send the invitation, not to them, to yourself. Let the silence be full this time. And when someone knocks at your door, remember, you don't owe them an answer. You owe yourself a home where you are never an afterthought, just the beginning. You are not what they left behind. You are what they'll never get back. And that is your power.